Have you ever noticed how easy it is to look into a mirror when you're adjusting your hair, but how unbearable it becomes when you're looking for the truth? Not the truth about your appearance, but the truth about who you are. It's strange. Most of us think we're honest people, yet we avoid the kind of reflection that can change us. Imagine a man walking quickly down a busy street, phone in hand, headphones in, eyes fixed on the ground. Someone calls his name from behind. He hears it. He knows it's for him, but he keeps walking, pretending not to notice. Why? Because turning around means facing something he's not ready for. We do the same thing with our inner life. We hear the call. We just keep walking. The truth is, we're all a little afraid of discovering that our carefully built self-image is just a costume, that maybe our good intentions are tinged with selfish motives, that the stories we tell ourselves to sleep better at night are in fact fragile illusions. It's not that we don't want to grow, it's that growth always begins with a confession, and confession demands courage. It demands stripping away the comfortable narratives that make us feel safe. Think about it. How many times have you defended yourself in an argument only to realize later that your reason was just pride in disguise? How many times have you convinced yourself you were acting out of love, when really you were afraid of being alone? The uncomfortable reality is that self-knowledge isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's devastating. Sometimes it dismantles the person you thought you were. But, and this is the part we try not to think about, it's also the only way to become someone worth being. So here's my question for you. What truth have you been avoiding? What mirror have you been afraid to look into? If you keep walking past it, you'll never see the cracks. And without seeing the cracks, you'll never rebuild stronger. Before we go further, I want you to pause and imagine, not the truth you wish was real, but the truth that actually is. Let's see where that road leads. And if you've already felt the sting of this kind of honesty, share in the comments below what it revealed to you. Your courage might just give someone else the strength to stop walking and finally turn around. What if, just for a moment, you stopped running from the truth? Not the filtered truth, not the one softened for comfort, but the raw, unedited version of yourself. Imagine standing before it without flinching. What would happen? Picture this. You wake up tomorrow and decide you will no longer avoid the uncomfortable. That every time you sense the sting of an inconvenient fact about yourself, instead of distracting your mind or finding someone else to blame, you'll lean into it. You'll let it speak. You'll listen without interruption. At first it would hurt. Your ego would protest like a child caught red-handed. But then something subtle would shift. You'd notice that the pain isn't lethal, it's liberating. Because truth, no matter how heavy, always comes with a strange kind of lightness once you accept it. Imagine how your relationships would change. Instead of defending yourself at all costs, you'd begin to ask, what if they're right about me? Instead of clinging to your perfect self-story, you'd open the door to something far more valuable than a spotless reputation. Genuine respect from others, because they'd see someone who is not afraid to be wrong. Think about how this would affect your decisions. You'd stop chasing the applause of others, because the applause wouldn't matter if you knew it wasn't rooted in who you truly are. You'd make choices that align with your deepest values, not the ones you pretend to have, but the ones you've fought to live out after facing your own shadows. And perhaps the most profound change, the inner noise would quiet down. That endless need to prove yourself, to polish your image, to avoid difficult questions, it would fade. In its place would be a steady kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't need defending, because it's built on reality, not on a fragile performance. The life you're imagining right now, the one in which you walk with that quiet strength, doesn't require you to become someone else. It only requires you to stop running from who you already are. So, let's keep going. Let's walk straight into the places you've avoided the most and see what treasures might be hidden there. Because the truth you fear today might be the very thing that sets you free tomorrow. We live in an age where being yourself is celebrated, but here's the hidden catch. Most people don't actually know who they are. They know the version they've been marketing to the world, the one that gets applause, the one that feels safe. And this is where the real danger hides, because when you only confront the parts of yourself you like, you end up living in a carefully curated illusion. The popular belief is that protecting yourself from uncomfortable truths preserves your peace. But that's a lie. In reality, avoiding the truth is like covering a wound without cleaning it. It might look fine on the surface, but underneath, something is rotting. The reason this feels so threatening is because truth doesn't just reveal flaws, it exposes motives. And motives are where the real self lives. You can hide bad habits for years, but when your true intentions come to light, you can't hide behind "I didn't mean it" anymore. That's why many people will go their whole lives without looking too closely. They fear that what they'll find will undo them. But here's the disruptive insight. Avoiding the truth doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you small. Every time you dodge self-examination, you surrender a piece of your potential. You trade the growth you could have for the comfort you can't let go of. And comfort, in this case, is just a polite name for stagnation. The truth is not your enemy. It's the scalpel in the hands of a surgeon. Yes, it cuts, but only to heal. And if you refuse the operation, you're not avoiding pain, you're prolonging the sickness. Think about the last time you told yourself a half-truth just to avoid guilt. Maybe you said you were too tired to help someone when the truth was you didn't want to be inconvenienced. Did that tiny self-deception make you stronger? Or did it quietly reinforce the habit of protecting your ego over living your values? When you break from the comfortable lie, it feels like standing in the cold without a coat. But give it time, and you'll discover you don't freeze. You wake up, you start to breathe deeper. And slowly, you realize that truth was never the threat. The threat was living your whole life without ever meeting the real you. Throughout history, the people who left the deepest marks on humanity were rarely those who made others comfortable. They were the ones who dared to speak truths that others feared to hear. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote that, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That challenge always begins with seeing ourselves as we are, not as we wish to be." Frankl understood something our culture often forgets. Self-deception is a prison without bars. You can walk around, smile, build a life, and still be locked inside it. The door remains closed until you're willing to face reality without anesthesia. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said that the most common form of despair is not being who you truly are. He didn't mean failing to find yourself in the modern sentimental sense. He meant refusing to become the person truth demands you to be, because you're clinging to the image you've already invested in. Even literature has been warning us for centuries. In Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, the narrator confesses his own spite, pettiness, and contradictions. He's not a hero. He's an exposed nerve. And yet, there's an odd power in his honesty. It's a reminder that only when we stop pretending do we have any hope of becoming better. But why do these voices matter today? Because they cut through our habit of polishing the outside while neglecting the inside. They refuse to flatter us. They remind us that maturity isn't the absence of flaws. It's the relentless pursuit of truth about those flaws, so they lose their power over us. We need these voices because, left to ourselves, we're experts at self-editing. We trim away the parts of the story we don't like. We write ourselves as the victim or the misunderstood hero. And in doing so, we cheat ourselves out of the one thing that can transform us, the whole truth. So when a wise voice speaks, whether it's a philosopher, a book, or a brutally honest friend, it's not there to humiliate you. It's there to hand you the key to the prison you've been decorating your whole life. The question is, will you use it or keep pretending you were never locked in? There's a strange thing about self-deception. It's rarely a single dramatic lie we tell ourselves. More often, it's a quiet pattern, so woven into our habits that we barely notice it's there. Like a background hum you've tuned out, it shapes every decision without ever announcing itself. Maybe you've noticed how certain criticisms always trigger you more than others. It's not random. That flare of defensiveness is a clue, pointing to a truth you'd rather not face. Or maybe you've realized you keep ending up in the same type of relationship, with the same painful ending, even though you swore you'd never do that again. That's not bad luck. It's an unexamined pattern replaying itself. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. The tendency to interpret everything in a way that protects our existing beliefs, especially about ourselves. We tell ourselves, "I'm just unlucky," instead of asking, "What is it about my choices that keeps leading here?" The pattern stays invisible because we're invested in keeping it that way. But these patterns are not just personal, they're often generational. You might be carrying ways of thinking you inherited without question. The way your family avoided conflict, the way your culture defined success, the way your role models modeled love or fear. These scripts run in the background, guiding your reactions before you even have a chance to consciously choose. And here's the real danger. Every day you ignore them, the patterns get stronger. They become your normal. You stop questioning them, and eventually you confuse them for your identity. The moment you start seeing these invisible dynamics, everything changes. You realize that the fight you thought you were having with your boss is really a replay of the way you argued with your father. That your reluctance to commit isn't about finding the right person, but about avoiding the risk of being truly known. Once exposed, a pattern loses its absolute power, but as long as it remains hidden, it will keep writing your story for you. And that's the subtle tragedy. Living a life that isn't fully yours because you never took the time to uncover the patterns shaping it. The first step? Dare to believe that the discomfort of truth is a better teacher than the comfort of repetition. Only then can you stop living in the echo of your unexamined past. Sometimes an entire lifetime of self-deception can be dismantled by a single sentence, if you're willing to let it land. These are not soft, comforting phrases. They are sharp, condensed truths that feel almost like being struck, and that's precisely why they work. Here are a few to carry with you. Avoiding the truth doesn't protect you, it imprisons you. You cannot heal from a wound you insist isn't there. Your ego is not your identity, it's your defense mechanism. If you are always the hero of your own story, you're not telling the real story. Growth begins where your excuses end. These are not motivational quotes to hang on a wall. They are meant to unsettle you, to plant a splinter in your thinking that you can't easily ignore. Because once a truth like this enters your mind, it quietly demands action. Think about it. Every time you feel that inner resistance, you are standing at a fork in the road. One path leads back to comfort and denial. The other leads to growth and freedom. The choice is always yours, but the longer you delay, the harder it becomes to choose courage. The real purpose of these statements is not to make you feel bad about yourself. It's to remind you that your life is happening now, in real time. And every day you avoid the truth, you are not just standing still, you are drifting further from the person you could become. Dostoevsky wrote, "The man who lies to himself loses all respect for himself and for others. And having no respect, he ceases to love." That's the trajectory of unchecked self-deception. It erodes your self-respect. And without self-respect, love, real love, cannot survive. So maybe you need to pick just one of these phrases and let it work on you. Repeat it until it stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like an invitation. Because that's what truth ultimately is. Not a punishment, but a doorway. And the sooner you walk through it, the sooner you stop merely existing and start living in reality. Here's the paradox most people never grasp. The very truths you resist are the ones most capable of setting you free. It sounds contradictory. How can something that wounds also heal? But that's the nature of reality. The medicine for your soul rarely comes in a flavor you enjoy. Think of the moments in your life when you felt most humiliated, exposed, or painfully aware of your flaws. At the time, you probably saw those moments as setbacks, maybe even as evidence that you were failing. But if you look closer, you might realize they were the turning points. They stripped away the illusions you couldn't have given up voluntarily. The human heart longs for comfort, but the human spirit grows in challenge. That's why comfort and growth so often stand opposed to each other. Comfort keeps the walls intact. Truth breaks them down. Comfort lets you keep the story you like. Truth hands you the story you need. This is why some of the most grateful people you'll ever meet are not those who had the smoothest lives, but those who were forced to face truths they didn't want to see. They understand that without those unwelcome revelations, they'd still be living a smaller life, one defined by fear, ego, and pretense. And yet, here's the part we struggle with. Truth doesn't always arrive gently. Sometimes it comes in the form of a failed relationship, a public mistake, a betrayal, or a collapse of something you thought was unshakable. You can curse it, or you can ask what it's trying to teach you. The paradox is that the same truth you wish to avoid today could be the foundation for your freedom tomorrow. You can fight it and stay exactly where you are, or you can endure its sting and step into a new kind of strength. So the next time life confronts you with something you don't want to hear, remember, you're being handed a gift that just happens to be wrapped in sandpaper. It's not here to destroy you, it's here to uncover you. And what it reveals might be far more valuable than the comfort it took away. If you strip away the illusions, endure the sting, and choose to face what's real, something remarkable happens. You begin to trust yourself again. That trust is not built on wishful thinking or inflated self-esteem, but on the solid ground of knowing you no longer have to hide from yourself. Imagine living without the constant need to defend your image. You stop wasting energy rehearsing what you'll say to justify yourself, because you're no longer living a life that needs justification. The mental space that once went to self-protection is now free for creation, connection, and real purpose. There's also a deep emotional reward. The people around you begin to sense that you are not playing a role. They feel safe with you because they know you won't twist reality to save face. This creates relationships built on mutual respect rather than mutual performance. It's not about being perfect, it's about being trustworthy. And then there's the quiet, almost hidden benefit: peace. Not the fragile kind that comes from avoiding conflict or uncomfortable truths, but the robust peace that comes from alignment. You know your flaws. You know your strengths. You know the difference between who you are and who you pretend to be. And you've chosen the truth. The irony is that this is the kind of confidence people spend years trying to fake. They buy the clothes, learn the body language, practice the right words. But deep down, they know it's an act. When you face your truth, you don't have to act. You've earned the right to stand as you are. This reward is not instant. There's no shortcut to it. It's carved out over time. Each time you choose honesty over self-protection, each time you let reality shape you instead of your pride. But when it arrives, it's unshakable, because no one can take away the person you've become through that process. So if you've been wondering whether the discomfort of truth is worth it, remember this. What you gain is not just a better version of yourself. It's the freedom to live without pretending. And in a world addicted to appearances, that freedom is priceless. To truly understand why facing your own truth changes everything, it helps to see the framework beneath it, a kind of inner architecture that governs growth. In philosophy, particularly in the realist tradition of thinkers like Thomas Aquinas, there's an insistence that the human good is rooted in reality, not in how we feel about it. In other words, truth is not negotiable. It's the foundation. Psychology mirrors this. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we'd rather not see. His point was not to demonize these hidden aspects, but to integrate them, because only what is faced can be transformed. Deny the shadow, and it grows stronger in the dark. Confront it, and it becomes part of your strength. Even history gives us the same lesson. Civilizations that refuse to face their own moral decay, choosing instead to maintain the illusion of progress, eventually collapsed. The pattern is universal. The refusal to acknowledge truth is the beginning of decline, whether in a nation or in a single human heart. This framework has 3 layers. First, awareness. You cannot change what you cannot see. This means deliberately stepping into moments of discomfort, reading books that challenge you, listening to people who disagree with you, reflecting honestly on your motives. Second, acceptance. This is not resignation. It's the decision to stop fighting reality. You acknowledge what is true, even when it damages your ego. Acceptance doesn't make the truth hurt less, but it makes it useful. Third, action. Awareness without action becomes cynicism, and acceptance without action becomes passivity. Action means you take the truth you've faced and let it inform your choices, relationships, and priorities. It's the proof that you value reality more than comfort. The beauty of this framework is that it's not just philosophical, it's practical. You can apply it daily. Notice when you feel defensive, awareness. Ask yourself what truth might be hiding behind that feeling, acceptance. Then take one concrete step that aligns with what you've learned, action. The path is ancient, tested, and demanding. But it is also the only path that leads to integrity, a life where your inner reality and your outer actions finally match. And in that alignment, you discover that truth was never your enemy. It was the cornerstone of the life you were meant to build. If you've stayed with me through this journey, you've already felt it. That pull toward honesty, the quiet voice inside saying, "It's time." The question now is whether you'll act on it. Because knowing the importance of facing your truth and actually doing it are two entirely different things. You have a choice. You can keep decorating the prison of self-deception, adding layers of comfort to make it feel less like a cell. Or you can take the key, uncomfortable, cold, and demanding, and open the door. No one can walk out for you. Here's what I want you to remember. Truth is not here to humiliate you. It's here to rebuild you. Yes, it will strip away your illusions, but it will also give you back something you didn't know you'd lost. Your dignity. The dignity that comes from living without pretense. This isn't about becoming flawless, it's about becoming whole. It's about refusing to be a stranger to yourself. And if that means sitting in front of the mirror, seeing every scar, every contradiction, every piece of unfinished work, so be it. Because that's where real strength is born. The cost of avoiding truth is high. It will rob you of growth, of peace, of relationships built on trust. But the reward for facing it is greater still. A life you can inhabit fully, without the exhausting burden of keeping your own lies straight. So here's my challenge. Choose one truth you've been avoiding and bring it into the light this week. Write it down. Say it out loud. Share it with someone you trust. Let it sting, and then let it guide you. You might be surprised at how quickly fear turns into freedom. And now, I want to hear from you. In the comments, tell me, what's one moment in your life when facing the truth, however painful, actually made you stronger? Your story might be the reason someone else finally finds the courage to stop running. If this message stirred something in you, don't just walk away. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more conversations that refuse to stay on the surface. Because here, we go deep. And that's exactly where transformation begins.